All right, today we are going to talk about starting with why. Well, what do I mean by that? And am I trying to copy Simon Sinek's book, Start with Why? No, I'm not trying to copy it, but there was a lot of transferable principles that I learned from that. And it reminded me of the importance of mission, vision, and values in really anything we do, but specifically any team that we lead. The importance of having a clear why is important. And I just want to preface by saying this: if you don't have a clear vision for your worship team, then you will just be a leader of music. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about that. All right. So I kind of was reflecting off of what I posted last week in terms of this old um, talk I did at a conference back in 2018, and it was called "Why Worship." And as I was reflecting on that, and kind of going over my notes of, so I asked people. I took a poll on Facebook. Oh goodness, probably a month ago or so, and I just asked this question of like specifically for pastors and worship pastors, but mainly pastors, like, what do you hope to see out of your worship leader, or what are some things that you look for in your worship services to that extent? And I got a good amount of feedback. And so as I was going over those notes and kind of looking at what are some of the things that people are saying, also overlaying with what I talked about last week, um, I was like, man, if we don't start with why, and I know that's the title to Simon Sinek's book, but if we don't start with that, we don't have a good basis going forward. And your how and your what and all those things, I don't believe will have the impact that they can have if you don't have a clear why. And so, just to remind you all, um, like, here's my why as a worship coach, as a worship leader, um, in this season of my life, as I'm trying to take steps and follow God's call. My why, my vision, if you will, is to cultivate a thriving community where worshipers are raised up in character, competence, and cognitive health, empowering local churches, colleges, and communities to flourish. So that is my why, and that's what my heart beats for. And so out of that why, it informs, okay, then how am I going to do that? What are the things I'm going to offer? And so the what that comes out of the why is typically a mission statement. So you have a vision statement, you have a mission statement, and then you have values. At least in most companies, most churches, you see those things playing out. And so my mission from that why is to create transformative content, provide coaching for worship leaders, and to connect them to churches in need, fostering a vibrant worship communities that glorify God. So that is the what from my why. And let me just give you a little bit of my story. I've been leading worship for about 18 years. And I remember the first, 7 years, the first church I was at leading worship, it was an inner city church here in Kansas City. And I was just learning. I was just growing. I was still learning guitar at that time. Um, and I grew a lot, and I had a small team, but I was very, very part time at the church. Actually, I wasn't even part time. I just I volunteered to lead worship, and but I had a day job, and so I'm not saying that that's what hampered me. I think a lot of it there was a culmination of a lot of this. Like I'm learning, I'm trying to figure out my philosophy for worship leadership, and so those first 7 years coupled with even my next church that I became a worship leader at, and that one I was full time. So like here, okay, now this is a different realm. Like I'm able to give way more time at leading worship, pastoring the team, um, um, developing leaders, all that kind of stuff that that goes into worship leadership. And even for the first goodness, 1 or 2 years, I can't remember the time frame. It's been so long ago. I still didn't have anything in place. And what got me to come to this conclusion or the importance of having a why or a mission, vision, values as a worship team, and I'm going to get to that here in a second, um, was I started having people interested in joining the team. Like as most people do, like you have people saying, "Hey, I sing or I play." A lot of times people just sit in the back and they hide their talent and they don't tell you that they have it. But then there's this a good number of people that they want to be involved, and some of it's for the right reasons. Some of it's, let's be honest, for the wrong reasons. They just want to be out in front. And there's a certain part of that that's not inherently bad to want to be in the spotlight, but I think you got to be really careful with that. But anyways, so as I started having more people interested, I became quickly aware of the importance of, okay, if I need to tell somebody no, um, for me, I was like, I need something to fall back on to where it's not just, okay, well, Curtis said no, and somebody could take that personal. I had to have a clear vision. I had to have clear expectations of what I felt called to be about as the pastor of that worship community. And you have great responsibility. I think we know that in any position of ministry, whether you're full-time, part-time, you just volunteer, any position of authority that you have in ministry, um, you have this call on your life. Not this call, I shouldn't say it like that way, but you have this responsibility to be the leading voice in that ministry, whatever it is. And so I started researching. I started talking with, I started Googling a lot of churches. I started talking with a lot of my worship peers, worship leader peers. And I started just gathering information of here's what this church does, here's what this church uses. And I crafted my own from that. And it quickly became something that I relied on, and it was something I could point back to. So now it's not just Curtis is telling me no, or Curtis is telling me yes, or Curtis is being very subjective in whatever. I had, here's our why, and out of that, we have a mission statement and things that we value as a team. So that's kind of where this all came about. And I just wanted to say this. As a worship leader or pastor, however you terminize, however you say that in your context, you have been called to be the carrier and protector of the vision of the music team. And now you're probably like, okay, why did you say music team? I'm going to get to that here in a second as I pull up these documents that I have in place at the church I'm at now. But I think that's important to state, and I think we all know that, but in case we don't, like and I was saying that earlier, but probably not as well as that statement right there. I was trying to say that earlier. You've been called to be the carrier and the protector. Okay. And so let me just to read off some of these, and just to be clear, I'm gonna in the show notes or in the link below. You're going to have a link to access these documents and download those for yourselves for free. And my prayer in that, and my hope, I guess, is if it can be a benefit to you, you can take as much of that. You can maybe that spurs on some ideas for you to craft your own. But I wanted to make that available for you guys because people made things like that available for me, and that's what informed my creating and praying and thinking and talking about it to other people. That's how I crafted my documents. And so let me pull these up really quick. I have, let's see here. Here's this. So it's kind of a handbook. And when you say a handbook, that can turn people off, and that can be like, oh my goodness, like, we felt called to lead worship and give of our gifts and our talents, but this makes it sound very corporate, very business-like. Let me just say this. There's a level of that is needed in anything. Now, I don't want to digress. I think the church, if we're not careful, sometimes we err too much on the business side, and we forget that we're the church, we're the body of Christ, and not all those things translate the same. But so I'm not going to read all this. That's where, if you want to download that and look for them yourselves, they're going to be in the link in the description of the show notes. But after giving a lot of prayer and thought, I came up with a mission statement. So I sort of did this backwards, forgive me, in my context. It should be a vision and then a mission and a values, or at least that's how it works best in my mind. Your why is your vision, your what is your mission, and your how will be your values. At least that's how I've seen it described, and it makes the most sense. Where I kind of went a little bit backwards is I listed my mission statement above my vision statements. And so I had 3 vision statements. But the mission statement, and let me rabbit trail just a hair here. Every church should have, like I said this earlier, mission, vision, values, or vision, mission, values, however you want to say it. Seems to flow better if you say mission, vision, values for me. But anyways, every church should have that in place so they know why they do what they do, and how they do it for the impact of the kingdom. And I think people could disagree with me, but I think that the different ministry areas, if you were to say the hospitality team, our mission is going to be the exact same thing as the church's, maybe. And I'm not faulting that. But for me, I quickly the church I was at, it had a mission, and it was a good one. But I felt like I needed something more specific for the worship team. And it would complement and support the church's mission. Otherwise, that would be silly to deviate. And then you start siloing if that happens. But I felt very passionate, and I did a lot of prayer on this. And here's where I landed. I landed with our mission statement as a worship team is creating experiences and modeling lifestyles of worship where people encounter Jesus and are changed. And like, I really felt pretty strong about the band Lifehouse, and when they had that song called Everything, and there's a line in there that says, how can I stand here with you and not be moved by you? Like, our role on Sunday mornings, I was a believer that our role on Sunday mornings as a worship team, and I'm going to change the language here in a second when I get to it, was, okay, we aren't the ones to save people. We even shouldn't be creating these emotions just to play on people's emotions or to manipulate people's emotions, but everything we do creatively, spiritually, reflectively, fill in the blank, it needs to be pointing people to Jesus, because Jesus is the only one that can to change hearts. I'm going to get a drink real quick. So he is the only one. So our job is to point people to Jesus and let the Spirit and let Christ do the work that he is the best at. Now, next, I felt like terminology was important, and I still do. And so we started kind of changing our language. Instead of saying that we were the worship team, we were going to call ourselves the music team. And it was intentional because sometimes there's this separation of, okay, the people on stage leading the music, singing, playing, they're more important than the people in the back. And the people in the back, what I mean, like running lights, running sound, running video, running live stream, like you name it. Like there can be this disconnect, this separation of like, okay, well, they're not a part of the worship team, and that's not true. But I wanted to change the terminology, saying we are the music team, because worship is a lifestyle. Worship is not the 4 songs you sing on Sunday. Worship is not even the type of service that you have. And that's where we've gone wrong over the years, is we've narrowed our meaning of worship to a genre or the set of the service. And don't get me started, but like, okay, you're just supposed to set up the preacher and then get out of the way, because the most important part of the service is the preaching of the word. I don't completely disagree, but I think it's all important. Why have we segmented those things, and why have we separated them and not seen how they all intertwine? Anyways, that's not what this podcast, this channel, this talk, whatever is supposed to be about. But so we started to call ourselves the music team because of that. It's supposed to be a lifestyle of worship. And so we are here to lead the music, which should be worshipful. And then we had 3 vision statements, if you will. One was lifestyles of worship, which kind of came off of what I was just talking about. And what I meant by that, like worship bigger than the room. Like when you, what is your lifestyle like Monday through Saturday? Okay. If you put on your worship lifestyle hat only on Sundays, you're missing the point. Our expectations are not to have someone on the music team simply because they are good at what they do. Being a member of the music team is a position of spiritual leadership within the school that encompasses shepherding people spiritually through music, as well as setting an example of what their life of worship, what a life of worship should look like. So, lifestyles of worship, worship bigger than the room. That was vision statement 1. Vision statement 2 was serving through simplicity. He must increase, I must decrease. And I just kind of explained that, like, the ultimate goal of the music team is to get out of the way and let people rush to the throne room of God. And so many times, especially if Sunday morning worship is your only avenue for playing music or singing or running slides or running sound, if we're not careful, we all have itches and cravings and desires in our musical taste or the way we approach our craft. And I think we've all seen it. The Ocean's drummer, right? YouTube that, Ocean's drummer. Like, he has a gift and he seems to be a great drummer, but he became a distraction, and he was trying to do all the fills when it was not needed. And so, like, serving with or through simplicity. And then vision number 3 for us is and was, because I've used this as my previous church and I'm using it now as my current church, serving with excellence and hard work, and meaning failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And this was another big thing that I tried to model and teach is, man, if there's a difference, again, this comes down to terminology, there's a difference between practice and rehearsal. And so many times you could tell when people showed up for that midweek rehearsal, is what I called it. We did it on Thursday nights. Now we do it on Wednesday nights. If that was the first time they were playing the music, then they're treating that as a practice and not a rehearsal. And that's failing to prepare. Now, I get it. Like, everybody has jobs and families. Me too. I'm not full-time at the church I'm at now. I have a job. I have a family. But I would always practice ahead of time, because that's what practice is. It's like with your craft, with your instrument, whether it's a vocal. And again, even if you are a sound person, how are you practicing? Now, that's where it gets a little tricky, and you have to get creative of, a lot of people don't have a soundboard at home to where they can, like, how would you mix that and practice at home? That's where it gets kind of tricky, and people running the slides. So I'm not creating this hard line to where, okay, well, you guys haven't practiced when you come to midweek rehearsal. I digress a little bit, but I think you get the importance of preparing. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And one of the scriptures I would use for that was Psalm 33:3. I don't think I have the name right. Kenaniah. I don't think that's completely right. But he was the head Levite, and he was in charge of singing. And it says that was his responsibility because he was skillful at it. So serving through excellence and hard work. Anyways, I'm going to kind of rush through these next things because, again, this is more about the information and the importance of our why. And then you can look at these if you so choose to download that free download. Again, going to be in the notes. But we had 6 values, I think. Craft, they all started with C. Surprise, surprise. Craft, commitment, coachability, chemistry, charisma, communication. Those were the 6 things that we valued. So that's how things played out. And again, all these things, these hows, supported the what, and the what supported the why. But it was important to have the why right from the get-go. So one thing that Simon Sinek says in his book, Start With Why, that really jumped out to me was finding why is a process of discovery, not invention. He used the analogy of an arrow. An arrow by itself is not that significant. I mean, it's just a piece of wood with some feathers. Yes, it has the sharp arrow that depends how those were crafted in the old days. It's probably a type of stone that was sharpened and formed to form a point. But by itself, an arrow doesn't really accomplish what it's meant to accomplish until it is used properly. And for it to be used properly, it has to be pulled back. And so he was making this analogy that the arrow gets its importance and significance from discovery, from taking step back, if you will. And so that's what I did. I had to take a step back and, okay, I need something in place to make it effective why we do what we do. And then another thing he says in the book was the importance of clarity of why, discipline of how, and consistency of what. Clarity of why, discipline of how, and consistency of what. So that's kind of the challenge that I just wanted to come to you guys today and just share. And hopefully, this inspires you that if you don't have something in place in your ministry, and specifically, I'm talking to worship leaders, but I don't know who else is going to watch this. Like, this is pretty transferable, I think, really, in any form of ministry, any team that you lead, you've been entrusted with to be the protector of the vision. Okay. Like, what is your vision? Like, your how won't be very effective if you don't have a clear why. And then the last thing that's in the downloads, sorry, I feel like I'm kind of all over the place today, is so I would have this one document that I read through most of that with you. I would have that in place as kind of like, here's our mission, vision, values. But then I would get more specific for what we're looking for, like desired skills. And so I had something for bass players, for singers, for electric guitar players, for acoustic guitar players, keyboards, drums. Don't know if I'm missing any areas, but those were the main areas that we had. And then I even had some for running sound. Okay. So I had these bullet points of desired skills desired. Okay. So I didn't say required. I said desired, because like, if you create such a high bar, you got to be careful. Like, you can create such a high bar where then nobody can participate. But then if you have a very low bar where everybody can participate, but yet that can be kind of distraction. Because let's just be truthful. Not everybody should be up there being a singer, whether they have a joyful noise or not. So the purpose in all that is there's these desired skills, and those really, really helped me in onboarding of musicians and singers and tech people. Because again, this could be like, okay, this isn't just Curtis saying, no, I'm sorry, excuse me, but I could go back and I say, hey, man, like, here's what we're looking for out of specific position. And man, you're just not quite there. I had one person, they were auditioning to be a vocalist, and we had the initial audition, and that's something I'm going to create another probably video in the future, kind of walking through onboarding and audition process, because that's another big thing. Especially, I'm hearing pastors say, man, we need more help, we need more musicians, we need more leaders. Well, in order to get that, there's ways to get that, but I don't have time for that today. So, and I could just share some of the process that worked for me. But anyways, having these documents in place, I auditioned this person, and I gave him a couple songs ahead of time, and then we had a acoustic guitar and a song. And for me, if it's a vocalist, I would always let's just pick on a female. I would say I would give them a song to lead, to see how they could lead a song, how strong their voice is. Then I would give them a song to sing harmony on, and I would lead, and they would sing harmony to me. Well, this person, I remember, like, they were kind of having a hard time staying on the part, and so I said, hey, let's work on that a little bit more. I think I gave this person some more tutorial videos that they could practice with at home. And then I scheduled a second audition and brought them back in. And still, it wasn't quite what I was looking for, because one of the things in there for the vocalist was I need somebody that can to hear the part and stay on the part in our context. And unfortunately, they just couldn't quite do that. And it was a tough conversation. Like I really, really felt bad. This was a friend of mine, and I hated saying no, but it gave me like, okay, this isn't just Curtis saying no subjectively. Like here's why. And then I always would try to, okay, if this isn't your fit, again, using this analogy of being a vocalist, how can we find you a fit? And in this particular instance, I was able to have the resources to do kind of like a small choir once a month. And like that was a great way to get some of these people participating that had this heart, to worship, and they could sing with other people just by themselves, like to stay on the parts. And so that was a way for me to say, okay, it's not just a no, but here, let's find this way. So anyways, I feel like I'm going pretty long today. Um, but if you can't tell, I'm pretty passionate about knowing my why. And I want you to be able to know your why. There's just so much freedom in that. Um, and so again, check out the link in the show notes if you're interested in downloading that free handbook. It's probably about, oh goodness, 8 pages long or something like that. But my prayer for that is that if anything, maybe it just gets you to thinking. Maybe you already have something in place and you're like, okay, well, this didn't really help me, Curtis. I know all that. Um, but maybe you don't. And so this could be a way that if anything, maybe it gives you some ideas and you like find a couple things in there that might work for you. And feel free to copy any of that and use them in your context. Obviously, you wouldn't want to use the ones I have because it has our church logo on it. So you'd want to at least copy the text and paste it in another document and put your logo on it, whatever. But again, this is a free resource that I hope will be a help to you. Let me look over my notes. Think that was all I wanted to share. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I've covered everything. So anyways, I hope you have a blessed rest of your day. And again, if you have questions with any of this, you could leave a comment on the channel here, or if you ever want to email me, I can put my email in the show notes as well, but it's really simple. It's just curtisbiswell@gmail.com. Would love to have a conversation with you. And if you would like to pick my brain on things, I for sure don't have all the answers. I for sure don't. But I've learned a lot over the years, and I'm very passionate about being a resource in any way that I can. So anyways, God bless. Have a great day, and be looking for the next story I have. Next story. That's not what I want to say. Be looking for the next topic. Have a great day. Bye.